Yes, I was a broken woman. Yes, I didn't love me. Yes, I decided to settle for what wasn't best for me. Yes, I was in a toxic relationship. Guess what? Not anymore. I have grown from the broken pieces. I have learned to love me when no one else loved me. I have learned that I will never settle for in my life or my peaceful atmosphere. I have learned. Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for Testimonial Tuesday. I am your host, Sheena Gadine, and today we have an awesome author in the building, Miss Gwen Tiller. Am I correct?
Gwen Goolsby Tillery.
Yeah. See, don't charge it to my heart. Don't charge it to my heart. Me and names are not the best. But before we get into the beautiful Gwen, I have a quote that I read that I would like to give, to say before we start the show. And it says, your calling is going to crush you. If you call to men to broken hearts, you're going to wrestle with brokenness. If you're called to prosper, you're going to struggle to control your mouth. If you're called to lay hands, you will battle with spiritual viruses. If you're called to preach the gospel, you'll be sinful for wisdom that is anointing your message. If you're calling to empower, your self esteem will be attacked. Your success will be hardened faults. Your calling will come with cups, thrones, stiffs, and they are necessary for your mentor to be authentic, humble, and powerful. Your crushing won't be easy because your assignment is not easy. Your oil is not cheap by Patrick Weaver. And I read that, and it's just it goes with the fact of your story of your book of strength, courage, and resilience. So I thought it was just perfect for it.
I love it. I would like for you to send that to me because it
I
is
actually will.
absolutely on point.
I definitely will. Like I do my affirmations for the day, and you have to check in, and that just hit home. Thinking about your book and that, I was like, it's just a perfect match. So Gwen, how are we doing today?
I am doing well, thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to be able to come on and share a little bit about myself as well as the book and the authors. So thank you. I am well.
It's awesome, awesome. So tell me a little bit about your background. Like, tell me where you're from, how you got into writing.
So, where am I originally from? I am originally from the Bronx. Okay, I am a Bronx girl. Yes, born and raised, and spent I would say half my life there. I was there for a good amount of time. I went through my schooling in New York City, even my initial college degree, my bachelor's, as well as my master's degree. I got from New York, and so I am from New York. I have been living in New Jersey for the last 21 years. I live in South Jersey, and so that is where I am from. In terms of my background, I have spent over now about 27 years in public education. I am a former teacher, former special education supervisor, former child study team member, but not so former because I actually still do some consulting, private consulting with child study team services for local school districts. So that's a little bit of my professional background.
I love it. I love it. And we all need that education to, because the kids are our future. And definitely, it's a great thing to be able to take what you're doing now with your book to help others and empower them. So how did you come up with the title? Because that title
So
says a lot.
Um, and I realized I didn't answer about writing. So, because I've spent a lot of time in school, I am a writer. I've had to write. Even if I didn't want to be a writer, I had to
Right.
write. Between all the degrees that I had to get, and also professionally, my profession required that I do a lot of writing. I actually was professionally trained by some of the best writing experts out of the City College of New York. Um, the Writers Workshop. So I have always had a passion for writing. The first book that I released 4 years ago, I released it not because I wanted to, but because God told me I had to. And that book was Finding Purpose in Your Pain, Moving from Tragedy to Triumph. And that story outlined I can say, my forced early retirement from public education. Although I went into education knowing that this was something I wanted to do, I planned for it, I trained for it. But unfortunately, I developed a significant injury that caused me to have to retire early.
Mm.
And with that came a whole lot of emotions and confusion and just like, God, well, what is this all about? And so I found myself in a place of, I didn't realize it at the time, of really grieving that loss of independence, the financial independence that I had. It was a lot of grief that I dealt with. But at the time, I didn't realize what I was going through. But at some point, I got through the process. I did a lot of self development and I started the process of healing and realizing that God is a very intentional God. And so if he allowed it to happen, something's good going to come out of it. So I started asking, well, what is supposed to come of all of this? And that's when I got the feeling to produce the first book. So now years passed and I knew I wanted to do an anthology. I knew I wanted to share stories, but I wasn't exactly sure how that would all unfold. And so I began thinking, praying, reading, meditating, praying some more like, all right, God, what is this book going to be about? Who's supposed to be in it? Because just as God is very intentional, I try to be very intentional about what I do. Don't try to be haphazard about anything. And so I wanted to make sure that I was hearing from God clearly and that the people were the right people. And so for about a year and a half, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And finally, I felt like the right people came at the right moment. And that's when the book idea was birthed. So a little bit before actually starting the project, I am a minister. I don't put it out there often, but God will give me downloads every now and then, and it will be a pressing in my spirit that I've got to get the word out. And so I delivered this kind of impromptu message on Facebook, which I don't like doing, but I'm trying to be in a place of pure obedience to
Right.
God. So I got on and the message was about, coming through the fire. It was about, those three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego,
Go.
and how they were in that fiery furnace. And in the midst of being in the fiery furnace, what you will realize about that story, if you pay close attention, was they never lost their faith. They never lost their faith. No matter what was coming their way, in the midst of being in that fire,
Right.
the coals as hot as it could be, they never gave in and they kept their faith. And I just was like, you know what? When I think about my story, what I can say is I may have been down, but I never lost my faith in God. That even in the midst of the fire, I knew that I would be able to come through because of the God that I serve. And so, hence, that kind of began
Mm.
me thinking about the title of the book, Through the Fire. And then, as God began to show me who was supposed to be in the book, because the people He showed me, I kind of already knew their stories, and so it was like I didn't handpick them. I really believe that
Right.
God handpicked who exactly was supposed to be in it. And as you go through each one of those stories, when each one of those people present, when they're going through that thing, they felt like they were in the midst of fire.
Mm.
And so that's how I came up with the title, Through the Fire.
Listen, when I seen the title spoke to me in general because, like you said, we all have a story. We all been through something. So, like in the midst of God giving you this message, it was a perfect message, and it's a perfect way of helping to empower people that's going through something right now. Because especially after COVID, it's a trying times. People still dealing with a lot of things as well. So it's perfect, perfect timing, perfect stories. I'm just perfect, deep and perfect. So now, did you have a favorite story out of all the stories that was collabed in there? Was there one more touching than the other, or they all just hit all the same?
I can say I mean I've read through every single one of the stories, and even though my experience may not be the same as that author, I can say that I took something from each and every single one of the stories. The one common denominator that I will say, of course, is that no one ever lost their faith in God. We're all believers, and no matter what it looked like, we all stayed true to believing that God somehow or another was going to get us through. God was implemental in each one of those situations to helping us pull through. So I don't have a favorite story. Again, I knew most of the stories kind of on a general level,
Right.
but there were some that kind of touched me a little more than others. Not that I have a favorite or one was better than the other, but there was some that kind of hit me a certain way. I'll explain to you why. So in this book, I have people who I consider friends that are like
Mhm.
sisters, but I actually have my blood brother, like my brother is in the book.
Okay.
And not only is my brother in the book, my husband is in the book. And so it was quite interesting reading their stories as trying to read it from an outsider's
Right.
perspective and not someone who is in relationship with them. And it gave me such a different insight. I'll be honest, I told my husband, like, I cried reading his
Mm.
section. It was very difficult for me to get through his section because we've talked and I know the pain that he experienced um, as it relates to his through the fire
Mm-hmm.
issue. So it was quite challenging for me to have to read through that and read it and also critique it and make
Right.
sure that it was authentic, because the one thing that I wanted from each one of these stories is that they would be true and authentic and real. I didn't want
Yeah.
any fluff.
Right.
I didn't want any of that because we already have enough of that we deal with.
Right.
We have enough fluff. You ask someone, how am I doing? Oh, I'm blessed, I'm highly favored, I'm this, I'm that. But meanwhile, you're depressed, you're
Right.
angry,
Right.
you're anxious, you have
Mm-hmm.
no peace, you have no joy,
Right.
but you get this false answer. So it was really important for me to also have people who I knew were going to be genuinely authentic in telling their stories. And so that's the feedback I've gotten so far is people are surprised at how authentic people were in telling their stories in this book.
And see, that is so awesome because so many times we need that authenticness. So many times, like you said, people put on the facade of I'm okay. And, they're too afraid to say that they're not okay or that they're dealing with something because they're afraid of judgment. So to be authentically with, how they say, brutally naked and taking all the layers off and shedding it on a paper, that's deep. That's really deep. And a lot of people can't do that rawness. They're too afraid.
Um, I think a few of the authors were initially. They were definitely so. Again, I'm very honest and I'm very transparent. This is something that God has been showing me, and my honesty and my transparency is because I want people to know that they're never alone.
Right.
They're not unique in their situation. That
Right.
somebody has already gone through, not is going through, but already gone through
Right.
what you're going through, what you're feeling. Sorry, my
No,
dog.
it's okay.
And so
The
I
dog
try
said
to
he got
listen.
some authentic nicks too. He wants to add his
Yeah,
stuff in, so it's all
listen.
right.
He's hearing the garage door, so he's my protector.
Right.
So there was a requirement to be authentic, for each and every single one of the authors. And I
Right.
really believe that I got that out of them.
And that's so awesome. Now, what is your goal for this project? Like, what are you expecting? What are you hoping that people will get from this book?
So, man, the first thing I want people to know is that there is a through, that there's the other side of whatever it is that you're dealing with. there's the other side of it, that you can get through it, that you know what, whatever you're facing, whatever you're dealing with, that there is someone who has faced something that is similar. And guess what? God managed to get them through it. That it's going to be okay. No matter how bad it looks, no matter how hot that fire gets, you know what? You can get through it. Stay strong. Don't lose your faith, because God will carry you through it if you keep believing and if you keep trusting in Him, if you keep praying, you will get through it.
Definitely.
So that's the overall goal. I actually have a couple of things that I'm looking to do with this project. I will also be doing a summit come September. I'll be looking to do a summit that will involve the co-authors as well as some additional people. And this is the first time I'm putting it out there. There will be a Through the Fire Part 2.
Okay, see, and you took my question because I was going to ask if there was a part two coming to it, so you answered it already.
Yes,
Okay,
there will be a part two. There are a couple of people who I didn't want it to be. I like putting together books. I
right,
also help people publish. I feel like books, especially when you're telling your story, your testimony, that it should be something that people should be able to pick up and read through easily.
right,
One, because of a time factor, people don't have time, and people's attention spans, truthfully, are just not what they used to be.
right,
So I didn't want to create a book that was so overwhelming that people wouldn't want to get through it. That if you really picked up the book and had an interest in completing it, you'd be able to do it within a couple of days if you wanted to. And so I know I have people who've already finished the book and have given me feedback on it. So it's an easy read. So I didn't want to overwhelm people. So there are some other stories that I want to get out there. I want people to be able to share. The one thing I love about this collaboration, this anthology, that God gave to me. I am the biggest advocate for women, women empowerment,
yes,
women education, women support. However, again, in my obedience to hearing God, God said this needed to be men and women.
mm.
And so I was like, oh, men and women. I'm like, God, I'm like all about the women, empowering the women, and getting the women right.
Right.
And clearly I heard, but men are hurting too.
They are. They are. And it's a great way, like when you said your brother and your husband's in there, which is a great way to open the door to let men understand that it's okay to tell, your side and your pain. Because a lot of times they hold on to it because they feel that, it's attacking their ego and their manhood. And it's not, they've been taught that they're not supposed to show any signs of emotion.
Exactly. And so again, I was obedient. I was like, God, I gotta put the men in this. And he was like, yeah, you need to put the men in this. And so there are actually several men in the project. It's not just my husband and my brother. There's also, let me see, three, four other gentlemen within the book. So I had to think about it. So it is definitely different in that it is truly a collaboration of different stories of people from different backgrounds that are sharing stories that kind of cover an array of things. I knew what I was getting to before the dog started barking. I was talking about the transparency. And so for me, whenever God gives me something, I try to be a good steward over it and make sure that whatever it is that He's given to me, when it goes out into the world, that I've done my best with it. You know, and I talk about that a little bit in my story. I am or was or in the process of not being anymore a perfectionist. However, because that's a whole issue
Right.
right there. That causes a whole lot of procrastination and other issues. So I'm trying to find this balance of operating in excellence, which I believe that we should, but also not to the point where it prevents me from moving forward. So
Right.
as I was beginning to, because I had several people helping me edit, but it was important for me to be able to read through each one of the stories to make sure, like I said, that it was real and it was authentic. I didn't want any fluff going out.
Mm-hmm.
And so for my couple, Joni and Russell, I they sent their original manuscript to me, and I've known them for years, and they have a big heart and big passion for marriages. That is their thing, is that after, I think it's 40 years of marriage,
Mm,
they have a lot to share. They have a lot of insight and a lot of knowledge, and they're
right.
passionate about people having good marriages. And so I thought that they would be great to have in the book. And so when I started to read their manuscript, I was like, what is this? I said, I contacted them and I said, okay, are we trying to paint a picture of the Huxtables? Because right here, this is not working. I was like, no, you mean to tell me after 40 years of marriage, this is what you have to give? There were no real issues, no problems. And they were like, oh, okay, so you want us to be for real, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, okay, we're going to try again. And so I gave them some pointers and they went back and they tried again. And then they produced something that was more authentic and more real as it relates to marriage and the
Right.
struggles of communication and, being married at a young age and having kids and the finances. They
Right.
decided at that point they were going to be a little more real about marriage. And so, even their story, I believe, whether you're single
Right.
or married, I believe that this story can be beneficial. I believe that it could be a blessing to you when you read through it, because, first of all, it makes you realize that too many people get married for the wrong reasons,
True.
which is why so many marriages fail. And I'm talking about Christian marriages,
Right.
why they fail. And so being able to get an inside look from a couple who has 40 plus years in gives you some tips and some tools and some ideas of some of the things involved in being married, and particularly for them being married at a young age.
Right. Absolutely. But before we carry on, we are gonna take a quick break. And guess what, y'all? We about to see the commercial of Through the Fire. So we will be right back. See, listen, y'all better go get that through that fire. Stop playing. Listen, get the encouragement, get the strength and the resilience that they trying to give y'all and to empower y'all. But we're back. And as you were saying, as a married couple, now in this book, you also said you shared your story, right?
Yes.
Can you give us like a little bit of what your story entailed in the book through the fire?
Sure. So again, I am the creator of the project as well as one of the co-authors, and so I couldn't put any fluff in the book either, right? And I opened
Right.
up the book, so I'm like, okay, God, like there's so many different directions that I can go in with this. What am I supposed to speak about? And so God started, kind of pressing on me to speak about the thing that people probably least would think as it related to me. So I'm like, okay, all right. Do I really want to put that out there? All right, God, again, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to do this. And so the title of my chapter is I Am Who God Says I
Mm,
Am. And that, excuse me, that was birthed out of a process of me going through the fire as it related to my self esteem, my confidence, and who I was. And some of it stemmed from childhood issues, and I make it clear I didn't, here's the thing, when we think about trauma, we always think of the worst, right?
Right.
We think of somebody who may have been physically abused, someone who may have been sexually abused, but trauma happens in so many different forms. And
Absolutely.
so, although I say I didn't have a traumatic childhood, I experienced trauma. Um, I explain, I am a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I explain to people that parents, the majority of parents, I would say 90% of parents, probably more, do the best that they can do with what they've been given.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they do a good job.
Right.
It means that they do the best that they can do. And so I had a mom who, in her own way, was very loving. Uh, she was she was a great motivator and
Mm.
inspirer. I would say that. I think that's why it's so in me. From early on, I've always had the gift of exhortation to be able to encourage others because she always did that. But at the same time, she also put so much pressure on me to
Gotcha.
get it right, to
Right.
get it right. Don't do it if you're not going to do it right. And I heard that in my head like throughout my whole life, and it made me fearful of trying so many different things. It
Right.
made me fearful of stepping out. And then there was this other part where I also, again, I knew my parents loved me, but I wasn't really nurtured in that way that showed affection and showed love and was told I love you. So there were a lot of issues around who I was, my self-esteem, and so I struggled with that throughout a lot of my life. Even up until a few years ago, I found myself always wanting to be a people pleaser, but that came from my relationship with my mom because I was do
Sorry.
whatever I needed to do to please my mom and make
Right.
my mom happy. If it was getting another degree, which I got tons of them, whatever it was, I was going to get a good job. Literally, like I went into my educational career straight out of college. Within
Mm.
3 months of graduating, I was already into my educational career at the age of 22.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was always a lot of pressure on
Right.
me to do it right and to get it right. And there were issues around that. And at some point, a few years ago, I decided, you know what? I need to figure out who I am
Right.
and I need to become my authentic self. I need to love myself for who I am. And more importantly, I need to see myself the way God sees me. I need to become that royalty that God refers to me as. And so I started this journey of becoming who God says I am.
I love it. Do you think it was a hard process to go through, and also was it hard to write about it?
It wasn't hard to write about it, um, but it was hard to go through it. As a result of the process that I had to go through, see, when you don't know who you are, you
Hmm.
often attract people that shouldn't be attracted to you. I'm gonna put
Right.
it that way.
I agree.
So I found that I was in a lot of relationships that were one-sided,
Gotcha.
but I didn't realize they were one-sided because again, I didn't know who I was. I didn't
Right.
understand my value. And so I think one of the most challenging parts was as I began to love myself the way God tells me I should love myself, because the word says, love God, love yourself, okay? Love
Mm-hmm.
others as you love yourself, which
Yourself.
means, guess what? It's not sinful to love yourself. We
Right.
kind of got that wrong. God tells us we should love ourselves.
Right.
Well, because when we love ourselves, there's a certain standard and expectation that we'll set. We won't allow just anything to come our way. We
Right.
won't just put anything out there. And so, what I found challenging about this process was that the more I grew to love myself and know who I was, the more the dynamics of different relationships changed. And
Yeah.
so I found myself in a place of being very isolated,
Mm-hmm.
which was very heartbreaking and, to be honest, a little depressing.
Yeah, just a
You
little
know,
bit.
just a
A
little
little
bit.
bit.
You look around and you
Yeah.
realize that, so many of the relationships that you valued and you put so much into,
Mm-hmm.
these same people didn't necessarily put that same energy and effort into you. And so that part made it extremely
It's hard.
difficult. But it was so much revelation
Right.
that I got out of it, because I'm like, well, now I get it. Now I understand. Now I realize that, as my brother said, well, if you are a giver, because I'm a giver by nature,
Mm-hmm.
it's who I am. It's one of the things that my mom, I would say, she was such a great, she was a woman of wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and she gave me so much life wisdom, biblical life wisdom, and I never knew it until recently. I was like,
Okay.
that was Bible she was giving me, but I didn't realize it because she didn't go to church. But there
Right.
was so much in her in terms of her relationship with God and the love she had for people, and
Mm-hmm.
she poured that into me. So naturally, I became a giver, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
always give and wanting to always, do
Do.
best, do good or do well for people.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to find a balance with that.
Yes.
So what I had to learn too was that I could still be that loving, giving person that God created me to be, but I had to find a balance with it. I couldn't give so much of myself that I was depleted, that I gave so much of myself that the person who God wanted me to pour into, I no longer had the energy to pour into.
Right.
And so it was definitely a learning process of understanding who I was, to understanding why I had developed certain relationships and attracted certain people, because as a giver, that I'm going to attract takers.
Right.
So I couldn't be mad that I attracted takers. I
Right.
just had to become aware of the fact that I needed to find more balance
Right.
within my relationships. And so that's been a journey, and it's been a rather difficult journey, but I'm in a good place now. And now I can appreciate who I am. I can appreciate who God created me to be, and I can operate in a place of healed and wholeness and happiness with who God wants me to be, while still understanding that I have to find a balance.
Yes, and I love it being authentically you. And it's an awesome place. And like especially when you say like you're a giver and finding the boundaries, finding the balance. And learning that process is a hard journey because we like to please and we want everybody to be happy. And we see something that's going on and if we feel we can give it, we want to do it. But we gotta learn to sometimes use that word no. I
Yes.
can't do that. Nah, not right now. So absolutely. It's definitely a process, but I'm happy that you're finding the authentically you and smiling and happy because Through the Fire is an awesome book. And I can't wait to get in it some more because I have it on my Kindle.
Okay. So listen, so can I ask you a question? Did you have you touched on any of the stories yet? I know you're busy.
No, not yet, because I've been trying to get prepared for the next couple of weeks, but my downtime is gonna be in a couple of weeks. So that downtime I'm about to be all in that book. But from what I like the glimpse, yeah, it's Through the Fire. And y'all really need to get in it.
Yeah, and like I said, there's some amazing stories in there. We have stories again. I talked about the marriage part. Um, we have stories that go into what it's like to have been adopted by a family. We have stories surrounding mental health. One talks about just like different issues where it felt like, every time she got through one issue, there was another one. And she says, I had to just keep readjusting my crown. There's another story entitled Faith Through Adversity, where someone shares their story of having to overcome the loss of their spouse. We deal with drug addiction. When I tell you a poverty mindset, when I tell you these stories cover so much, they cover a lot of different areas. So it looks like we are still live, or at least it looks like I am in the stream, but it looks like I'm here by myself. Not sure what happened. Well, anyway, I'll just keep on talking just in case you guys are still watching. So again, the book covers, so many different areas and so many different topics. And like I said, each one of them is definitely real and authentic. And I believe that each one of the stories, whether or not you have personally experienced it or not, there's something in it that you will be able to get out of it. And so I say to you, definitely go and get your copy. You can order it through my website, www.successarise.com. You will not be disappointed if you go and get your copy.
Sorry, Gwen. Technical difficulties. See, they knew it was a good show.
Well,
Sorry.
listen, I stopped for a while, but then I started talking again in case it was still live.
Yeah, it was
So,
still live. Sorry about
okay,
that.
so
My
that's
internet
okay.
totally cut out. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I kept talking, so it wasn't like dead air for the whole time. I did continue to talk.
Yeah, we're still live now. So we were talking about you being authentically you, and we're happy that you're in a great place. So for anybody out there, how would you connect with them as far as like how could they get your book? Where could they purchase it at? And
So you just
anything else in service that you have. Sorry.
so you missed that. I talked about that a little bit while you were going. See,
My
listen, I was.
bad.
It's okay. Listen, I have a show, so I get it. I'm like, I would want someone to keep it going and not just be sitting there looking at the screen all the time.
Right.
So, but anyway, so you can get the book through my website, which is www.successarise.com, and that is ARIZE.com. If you'd like to follow me, I am on Facebook under Gwen Goolsby Tillery. I am on Instagram under Gwen Goolsby Tillery, and I am on LinkedIn under Gwen Goolsby Tillery. You can also, for the women, I have a women's group under the business, which is Success Arise. Again, that is ARIZE. If you would be interested in joining that, and that's just a little bit of daily information that I provide in the page. So if you're interested in that, you can also connect with me through that. Just to give you a little bit about Success Arise, it is my business slash ministry. I can't just say business because it is definitely God led. Everything I do, I try to do it God led. I don't really know how to do it any other way at this point. I struggled for a while to try to separate the two, and I
Hmm.
found myself I kept coming back. I kept coming back to infusing biblical principles in everything that I do. And I said, you know what? If it's meant to be, then this is how it's going to have to be. And so, Success Arise is simply about helping people to become the best version they can be, to help people move from stuck to unstoppable so that they can become healed, whole, and happy and walk in their purpose. And so through that, I provide counseling services, I provide coaching services. I have a coaching group that I have. You can get that information on the website as well. And so, the book actually is just a part of my overall goal to be able to encourage and inspire people to not allow their past situations and circumstances stop them from being who God has called them to be. Because no matter what you've been through, I want people to know that God's original intent for your life doesn't change.
I love
When
it.
when you were placed here on this earth, you were placed here for a specific reason, with a specific plan, with a specific purpose. And just because you got divorced or you were abused, that plan doesn't change. God's plan doesn't change. Sometimes that stuff actually propels us into our purpose and what God has for us. So for me, I think about what happened with having to retire early. That was the beginning of the process of me moving onto this journey of moving away from empowering and encouraging kids
Right.
to women. And so everything that happens, we may not necessarily understand it or we may not like it, but we can use the situation to propel us into what God has for us. And so that's kind of what Success Arise is about. That's what the book is about, is to be able to provide people with a glimpse of other people's stories and opportunities to know that you don't have to stay stuck. You can move forward and can become everything it is that God wants you to be.
Amen. I love it. It's an honor to have you here. It's an honor for people to listen and understand, her journey, and to understand what she's here to provide for you as far as her working in her ministry and her purpose. So she's here. So just know you're not alone. You have people that is here to help. Because a lot of times we feel that we're alone and we don't know what's next to do, and I'm lost, and they stay stuck and miserable. So Miss Gwen is here to help. She put it out there. The book is here to help. There's no excuses. The only excuse is for you not to do it.
Exactly.
So it's been an honor. So before we go, I have another. I think I call them affirmations, or stuff. But this one says you're angry. It's telling you where you feel powerless. Your anxiety is telling you that something is in your life is off balance. Your fear is telling you what you care about. Your your empathy is telling you that you were overextending and burnt out. Your feelings
Mhm.
aren't random, they're messages. And if you want to get anywhere, you need to be able to let them speak to you and tell you what you really need. And I found those, is like I said, so profound to everything that we're speaking to. So with this, I try to find affirmations and things to get people to understand that there are people that feel the same way you feel. And like she said, through the fire, we all been through something. Your past don't define you. So the book Through the Fire is out. It's on her website. It's on Amazon. There's no excuse. She even got a woman's program. She even helping men come out their feelings. Like, there's no excuses for nobody. No gender.
That's it.
No gender. So is there any last words you would like to leave the people with before we go?
Again, like I said, just know that your circumstances, your life circumstances, your setbacks, your struggles don't have to define you. That they can actually be the energy, the thing that propels you into what God has for you. I had no idea that something that would be traumatic as far as my health and the inability to literally, I was told at one point if I didn't have surgery immediately that I would be in a wheelchair. So it was pretty serious and
Yeah.
significant. I did not think that that would allow me to give birth to this ministry
Right.
that I am so passionate about, and I would not have it any other way. But I have a feeling that had I not gone through what I went through, I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't, more importantly, I wouldn't have the understanding. I wouldn't have the level of understanding, empathy, and sympathy that I needed to be able to move people forward. Because when I say you can do it, I don't say it because I'm just saying it. I
Right.
say it because I've done it. So
Right.
if God can do it for me, know that He can do it for you.
Amen. Sorry. I thank you guys for tuning in today for Miss Gwendolyn and Through the Fire and her co-authors. Go get the book. It's on Amazon. It's on her website. It's here to help you. It's not here to hurt you. The only thing it can do is just uplift you, empower you, and put you in a better state of mind. I thank y'all for tuning in for Testimonial Tuesdays. I'll actually be back on in about another 10 minutes with another guest. So I thank you for tuning in. And this has been your host, Sheena Godine. See you guys later.
Introducing to some and reintroducing to others. Speaker, entrepreneur, motivational coach, and author, Sheena Godine. If you wish to contact her, you can contact her via email at sgodine16@gmail.com, or you can visit her website, www